Welcome to a deep dive, into a kind of surprising intersection,
Right.
Tibetan Buddhism and modern humanism.
Interesting.
You might be thinking, what do ancient spiritual practices have to do with a philosophy centered on human reason and ethics?
Yeah, I can see that.
That's exactly what we're here to unpack. We've got an insightful article and FAQ from TATANKA.site, an organization focused on social justice and ethical AI.
Oh, interesting.
They even weave in a fictional story to illustrate the main ideas. Can ancient wisdom help us navigate the ethics of cutting-edge technology like AI?
I'm intrigued.
Let's find out.
It's a question that's becoming increasingly relevant as AI becomes more powerful and more intertwined with our daily lives.
So first things first, is there even common ground between Tibetan Buddhism with its emphasis on spirituality and modern humanism, which is often seen as more secular?
It might seem like an odd pairing at first, but what's fascinating is that despite their different approaches, they share some core values. Both emphasize compassion, equality, and the goal of reducing suffering. It's less about agreeing on the what and more about a shared why.
Okay, so how does this shared why play out in a practical way, especially when we're talking about something as complex as AI?
Well, let's take the concept of karuna in Tibetan Buddhism. It's often translated as compassion, but it's more than just a feeling. It's an active commitment to alleviating suffering.
So it's not enough for AI developers to just feel bad if their technology has unintended negative consequences. They
Right.
actually have to do something about it.
Exactly. Imagine you're developing an AI system for loan applications. Applying karuna means taking steps to ensure that the system doesn't perpetuate existing biases that might unfairly deny loans to certain groups. You're actively working to create a more just and equitable outcome.
That's a great example. It brings the concept down to earth and shows how it can directly influence the design of AI. And speaking of things being brought down to earth, what about mindfulness and meditation? Most people associate those with Tibetan Buddhism, but they've become pretty mainstream these days.
Absolutely. Mindfulness and meditation practices have moved beyond monasteries and into the secular world. We see this with things like mindfulness-based stress reduction, or MBSR, which has proven benefits for stress, anxiety, and even chronic pain. But what's really intriguing is how this connects back to AI development.
Okay, I'm curious. How does having mindful developers translate into more responsible AI? Is this about coding in lotus position?
Not quite. It's about cultivating a deeper awareness of one's own biases and motivations. If developers are more mindful, they're more likely to spot potential ethical pitfalls in their code, leading to fairer and more equitable AI systems. Imagine a world where mindfulness for AI developers is a standard workshop at tech companies.
That's a thought-provoking idea, and it makes me think about someone who's been a big proponent of integrating these kinds of values into our modern world, the Dalai Lama.
Yes, the Dalai Lama has been a powerful voice for universal ethics, advocating for compassion and kindness, not just as Buddhist principles, but as values that can benefit everyone. His work with human rights, peace movements, and environmental sustainability reflects this commitment.
Right, he's often seen as a champion for peace and kindness, which aligns with those core humanist values we talked about earlier.
Exactly. And his work really highlights how these seemingly separate philosophies can converge on shared goals and actions. This brings us to another point that Tatanka brings up, the Tibetan exile communities. They've faced immense hardship, yet they've created incredibly vibrant communities focused on education, preserving their culture, and advocating for peace.
It's almost like they're role models for navigating uncertainty and change, which is something we could all use a bit of in this age of constant technological disruption. Now, I'm really intrigued by this fictional story Tataka uses to illustrate these ideas.
Uh,
I know it's called The Monk and the Machine, A Path of Compassion.
and as you might expect, it features a monk named Tenzin and an AI developer named Lamo. They represent these two worlds, ancient wisdom and modern technology coming together.
It's a classic pairing. So where does their story take us? Do they manage to build a compassionate AI?
Well, the story isn't about providing a simple solution or a step-by-step guide. What it does beautifully is highlight the potential pitfalls of AI blindly pursuing efficiency. Tenzin challenges Lamo to consider the unintended consequences of her work on marginalized communities, prompting her to rethink her design approach.
It sounds like a call to action for developers to really think about the potential social impact of their creations. But merging spiritual and secular viewpoints can't be easy. There must be some areas where Tibetan Buddhism and modern humanism clash.
Absolutely, there are points of tension. Take the concept of karma and rebirth, which is central to Tibetan Buddhism. It might not resonate with people who are firmly rooted in a secular humanist perspective. Even the idea of compassion itself might be interpreted differently.
So how do we navigate those differences? Do we just agree to disagree?
That's where dialogue and open-mindedness become crucial. It's about being willing to listen to each other, understand the nuances of each other's perspectives, and find common ground, even when we don't agree on everything.
It's like building a bridge between two seemingly different worlds. We don't have to erase the differences, but we need to find a way to connect.
Exactly. And that bridge-building process is essential in a field as complex and rapidly evolving as AI. No single approach will have all the answers. We need that diversity of thought to navigate the ethical challenges ahead.
And speaking of challenges, TATANKA keeps emphasizing this idea of universal responsibility when it comes to AI.
Right.
What does that actually mean in practice?
It's a powerful concept that goes beyond simply making sure AI is profitable or efficient. Both Tibetan Buddhism and Humanism emphasize that we're all interconnected, that our actions have ripple effects. In the context of AI, this means considering the impact of our technology on everyone, not just a select few. You, as someone who's been following the ethical AI debate, know that these discussions often focus on the potential negative consequences of AI, but I think it's crucial to also acknowledge
The potential for AI to do good, to solve some of humanity's most pressing problems. It's like we're standing at a crossroads.
Exactly. And the choices we make now will determine which path we take. Do we prioritize individual gain over the common good? Or do we strive for a future where technology enhances human dignity and well-being for all?
Those are some weighty questions, and they really underscore why this conversation is so relevant to everyone, not just to developers or policymakers. We're all stakeholders in the future of AI.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so important to have these discussions, to bring diverse perspectives to the table and to be willing to challenge our assumptions. Sometimes the most unexpected sources of wisdom can offer the most valuable insights.
Which brings us to the heart of this deep dive. What can we learn from the intersection of Tibetan Buddhism and modern humanism to create a more ethical and compassionate world in the age of AI? We'll continue exploring that question right after. We were just talking about this idea of standing at a crossroads when it comes to AI and how the choices we make today will shape the future. It's both exciting and a little daunting.
It definitely is. And that's why this dialogue between ancient wisdom and modern thinking is so crucial. Tibetan Buddhism, with its emphasis on interconnectedness and compassion, can help us broaden our perspective and approach AI development with a sense of responsibility for the well-being of all.
So instead of getting caught up in the technical details, we step back and ask those bigger questions. What are the potential consequences, both intended and unintended? Who might benefit from this technology, and who might be left behind or even harmed?
Exactly. And those questions need to be asked constantly as AI evolves. It's not about halting progress. It's about steering it in a direction that benefits humanity as a whole. Remember that quote from Sitting Bull and the TATANKA article? It is through this mysterious power that we too have our being, and we therefore yield to our neighbors, even to our animal neighbors, the same right as ourselves to inhabit this vast land. It really speaks to that sense of interconnectedness.
It's a powerful reminder that we're part of something much larger than ourselves, and our actions have consequences that extend far beyond our immediate circle. Thinking about AI through that lens challenges us to consider the well-being of all beings, not just from a narrow human-centric perspective.
It certainly does. And while finding the answers to these complex questions might not be easy, the fact that we're engaging in this discussion, grappling with these ethical dilemmas, is a positive sign. It shows a willingness to shape the development of AI responsibly.
It feels like we're on the cusp of something truly transformative. AI has the potential to address some of humanity's biggest challenges, but it also carries the risk of deepening existing inequalities or creating new forms of suffering. It's like we need a new ethical framework, a moral compass to guide us through this uncharted territory.
I think you hit on something crucial. The existing frameworks might not be sufficient to navigate the complexities of AI. We need to be willing to adapt and evolve our thinking, drawing wisdom from both ancient traditions and modern perspectives.
So how do we move from these philosophical discussions to concrete action? How do we translate these ideas of compassion and universal responsibility into the actual development and deployment of AI systems?
Awareness is a crucial first step. We need to educate ourselves about the potential impact of AI, both positive and negative. We need to engage in open and honest dialogues about our values and priorities. And we need to start asking ourselves some tough questions about how we want AI to shape our world.
It's not just about the technology itself, then. It's about the people creating it, the data that feeds it, and the social context in which it operates.
Precisely. We need to consider who's designing AI systems, whose interests are being served, and what datasets are being used to train these systems. If we want AI to embody compassion and universal responsibility, those values need to be present throughout the entire development process.
It sounds like we need a fundamental shift in mindset, a new way of thinking about technology and its role in society.
And that's where ancient traditions like Tibetan Buddhism can offer valuable insights. They remind us that technology is not an end in itself. It's a tool that can be used for good or for ill. It's up to us to decide how we wield this powerful tool.
Right. It's not about demonizing AI or viewing it as an inherent threat. It's about harnessing its power responsibly and ensuring that it serves humanity, not the other way around.
Exactly. And that requires wisdom, compassion, and a deep understanding of our interconnectedness. It's about recognizing that our actions have ripple effects and that the choices we make today will have profound implications for the future.
The TATANKA article mentioned that the principles of Tibetan Buddhism have been influential in modern movements for human rights, environmental sustainability, and peace. It seems like those are essential perspectives to bring into the conversation about AI as well.
Absolutely. And it's not just Tibetan Buddhism. Many indigenous cultures have a long tradition of respecting the interconnectedness of all beings and living in harmony with nature. These wisdom traditions offer valuable insights into creating a sustainable future, not just for humans, but for all life on Earth. They can guide us as we navigate the complex relationship between technology and the natural world.
It's about finding that sense of balance, that recognition that we're not separate from nature, but an integral part of it. Technology should enhance our relationship with the natural world, not exploit it.
Couldn't agree more. And bringing that perspective into AI development could lead to some truly remarkable innovations that benefit both humanity and the planet.
We've talked about the philosophical and ethical dimensions, but what about the practical side? What are some tangible ways that we can integrate compassion and universal responsibility into the development of AI systems? How do we move from the abstract to the concrete?
One concrete step is to promote diversity and inclusivity within the tech industry itself. Right now, the teams building AI systems often lack representation from various backgrounds and perspectives.
So we need to ensure that the people shaping the future of AI reflect the diversity of humanity itself. That means more women, people of color, people from different socioeconomic backgrounds, and people with disabilities involved in the development process.
Exactly. And it's not just about ticking boxes for representation. It's about cultivating a culture of empathy and ethical awareness within tech companies. It's about ensuring that diverse voices are heard and that decisions about AI are made with a deep understanding of their potential impact on all communities.
That makes a lot of sense. But how do we actually create that kind of culture shift within an industry that's often driven by competition and rapid innovation?
There are several initiatives already underway. Some universities are incorporating ethics courses into their computer science curricula, and tech companies are hiring ethicists to advise on AI development. There's also a growing movement within the tech community itself to promote responsible innovation.
It sounds like there's a lot of positive momentum building, but I imagine there are also challenges.
Of course, one of the biggest challenges is that the tech industry is often driven by profit. Ethical considerations can be perceived as barriers to innovation or threats to the bottom line.
So it's this tension between doing what's right and doing what's profitable. How do we reconcile those competing pressures?
That's where government regulation can play a crucial role. We need clear guidelines and regulations to ensure that AI development is aligned with the public good and doesn't simply serve the interests of a select few. It's about striking a balance between encouraging innovation and protecting the well-being of society as a whole.
So it's a multi-pronged approach. Education, corporate responsibility, and government oversight all working together to guide AI development in a positive direction.
Exactly. It's going to take a collective effort to navigate these complex issues and create a future where AI truly benefits humanity.
And where those benefits are distributed equitably, not just concentrated in the hands of the privileged few.
Precisely. And that brings us back to the core of this discussion, universal responsibility. We all have a role to play in shaping the future of AI, whether we're tech developers, policymakers, or simply citizens living in a world increasingly shaped by this technology.
It's not about waiting for someone else to fix it. It's about each of us taking responsibility for our own actions and choices, both individually and collectively.
Absolutely. We need to be informed, engaged, and willing to speak up for the kind of future we want to see. And sometimes looking to seemingly unlikely sources like ancient traditions that have grappled with questions of ethics and human nature for centuries can offer valuable guidance.
And maybe that's the key takeaway here. It's not about pitting ancient wisdom against modern thinking, but about finding ways to weave them together to create a future where technology serves humanity in all its diversity and complexity.
Beautifully put. It's about recognizing that we have a lot to learn from the past as we venture into the uncharted territory of the future.
I think that's a great place to pause our exploration for now. We've covered a lot of ground, from the philosophical underpinnings of compassion and universal responsibility to the practical steps we can take to ensure that AI benefits all of humanity.
It's been a fascinating journey so far, and I'm eager to continue the conversation and explore what other insights we can glean from the intersection of Tibetan Buddhism and modern humanism.
Me too. We'll be back shortly to wrap up this deep dive and see what other thought-provoking connections we can uncover. We're back ready to continue exploring this fascinating intersection of Tibetan Buddhism and modern humanism.
Yeah, it's been a thought-provoking journey so far, hasn't it? We've gone from, like, ancient wisdom to cutting-edge technology, all in an effort to understand how these, like, seemingly different worlds can help us navigate the ethical complexities of AI.
It really has. And one thing that keeps coming up for me is this idea that the future of AI isn't just about algorithms and data, it's about values. It's about making choices that reflect who we are and what we want our world to be.
Absolutely. The choices we make about AI are ultimately reflections of our values as a society. Do we prioritize profit over people, individual gain over the common good? Or do we strive for a future where technology serves to enhance human dignity and well-being for everyone?
Those are the big questions, aren't they? And they can feel pretty overwhelming, especially when we're bombarded with news about AI advancing at such a rapid pace. It's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day and lose sight of the bigger picture. It makes me wonder, how do we as individuals actually live out this idea of universal responsibility that TATANKA emphasizes? It sounds great in theory, but how do we translate that into concrete actions in our daily lives?
You're right, it can feel overwhelming. But I think it's important to remember that embodying these values starts with small steps. Being mindful of our own consumption habits, for example. Where does our technology come from? Who made it, and under what conditions? We can choose to support companies that align with our values and advocate for policies that promote ethical and responsible AI development.
So it's about making conscious choices even in those seemingly mundane aspects of our lives.
Exactly. And it's about engaging in conversations like this one. Raising awareness, sharing ideas, and challenging each other to think critically about the impact of our actions. Because the future we create is a collective one.
It's not just up to tech developers or policymakers, it's up to all of us. We all have a role to play.
I couldn't agree more. And I think the more we can bridge these seemingly disparate worlds, the ancient wisdom of traditions like Tibetan Buddhism and the dynamism of modern humanism, the more likely we are to create a future that we can all be proud of.
A future where technology truly serves humanity.
Precisely. And that brings us back to that thought-provoking story TATANKA included in the article. If AI could truly embody compassion, as Tenzin and Lamar explored, what kind of world could we create? What problems could we solve? What possibilities could we unlock?
That's a question worth pondering, isn't it? And it's one that we all have the power to help answer through our choices, our actions, and our engagement with this rapidly evolving technology.
It's a future worth striving for. A future where technology and humanity work together to create a more just, compassionate, and sustainable world.
It has been fascinating exploring this intersection of Tibetan Buddhism and modern humanism. It just goes to show that sometimes the most unexpected pairings can lead to the most insightful discoveries.
And that by weaving together ancient wisdom and modern thinking, we can find new ways to approach the complex challenges of our time.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and keep those big questions coming.